Today we're giving a drawing class at the yet-to-be-named park at Hampton and Heather. We're focusing on two concepts to help the students learn how to draw. The first is focusing on edges, and then the second is focusing on negative space. Some exercises that we're going to use are blind contour drawing. Blind contour drawing, the blind part is that you can't look at the page. You have to keep your eyes focused on the object that you're drawing. You have to keep your pencil on the paper and move it along at the same speed your eyes are moving along the object.
This is my tree. No, look at Marie. Marie, show her your. Yeah, that's without looking at the paper. You just have to.
Blind drawing.
Thank you, blind drawing. Yes. You just.
And then the second half, we're focusing on drawing negative space, which is if you pretend that there's a frame around an object, then you draw the spaces between that frame and the object and the edges of the object. So it's the shapes, if you can imagine, you have to kind of trick yourself to see the shapes around the object. And so we're using those two tools to learn to practice drawing, to draw in a different way than we're used to. I'm going to focus on something called negative space. And do any of you guys have an idea of what that is? Before we were kind of focusing on, we were drawing the vines, we were drawing the trees, even though we were trying not to think, hopefully, that they were vines and trees. Now we're going to draw this space around what we think we're drawing, or what we're focusing on. We're going to do our hand again, and if you can put it in front, find a way to put it in front of something that frames it. So there's all these cables and wires that make these like rectangles or squares, and I want you to place your hand so that when you're looking at your hand, it's within a framed area. Just find a place to put your hand so that it's framed by like a square, and try to keep it still. We're gonna, and just for 2 or 3 minutes, and you're gonna focus on, instead of drawing your hand, I want you to focus on drawing the space between the frame and the edge of your hand.
Are we allowed? Is it contour drawing?
No, you're allowed to. Oh. You are allowed to look back at your page, but it probably would help to focus more on your hand.
Oh.
But you can look back at your page, and it might help you too. But mostly, look at your hand and focus on the space around it. You just find something that can frame your hand.
So what do we draw?
And now you're going to be drawing, instead of drawing your hand, you're going to look at the edge of that. And if you want, so like if my hand is here, you would be drawing everything around my hand. It might help if you first draw a frame on the paper.
Oh, like the outline.
Like the outline of what you're looking at. So just draw a frame roughly of the frame that you're looking at. And then that might help you see like the space around what you're drawing. I keep my hand here.
Right.
And you spend the next 2 minutes drawing that.
Well, I'm not drawing your hand.
You're drawing between this. You're drawing like the shapes between my hand and this frame.
Okay. I have the frame.
But we're gonna draw your hand anyway. Yes or no?
Do you draw the hand?
Draw the shape around my hand. So it's a line drawing. You got to keep your hand in one place. Take a minute to talk about this. Similar to the first drawing, this is maybe a bit harder of a concept to understand. I wish I could provide some tricks for you some tools to kind of trick yourself into seeing.
To seeing that, yeah.
If you close one eye, it's so much easier.
You could, yes. So we're gonna start over. I want you guys to get a blank sheet of paper, and similar to the first drawing, the first set of exercises we did, this is a line drawing. Who is still confused about what negative space is?
Is that what we're doing now?
Yes, we're still doing negative space. Is there any student who can explain it?
Everything that is not the object, that is around the object within a frame.
Yes, yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
Any space that is not filled with a photo or text, that's called white space. So it would be all the quote-unquote white space that is, so say I'm looking at a screen now and I see the green leaves, but and I see the wire from the phone, phone wire, but I also see all the blue sky. So it's that blue sky which is the negative space.
Yes, that's two good definitions.
It's not looking at the leaves, but you're looking at the air or the shapes that are made in between the leaves. So
Yes.
it's like focus on the shape that is in between the leaf and the other leaf as opposed to the shape of the leaf.
So negative space is the space, it's not the object, it's the spaces between or around the object. If you can imagine something framing that object, and like in this case, conveniently there is a frame, so that'll help you see the space around that object that you're drawing.
Okay, so I have a question. So I'm drawing like that top square up there, right? And
Yeah.
I can see the vine, and I'm interested in the little bit of the vine.
Yes.
So the wire which is framing it, the tree behind it becomes a negative space because that's not, I'm interested in the
Yeah,
vine.
like in a newspaper, there's white space around the text or the photograph. If there's anything in the background, just pretend that's
Blue sky.
blank white space. If there is
Gotcha.
blue sky, that's particularly
So
convenient.
the ultimate object then of drawing negative space is you should have the outline of the object that you want to draw.
Yes, for this exercise, ultimately it's a trick to help you draw with all these other tools we're learning. So for this exercise, focus on some leaves of a vine that is conveniently framed by the pergola or by the wires, and we're going to spend just 3 minutes doing that, and then we'll talk about it again. Some of you are drawing the frame. Ignore the frame itself, ignore the pergola. I want you to focus on the vine, because that's what's in the negative space. Focus on those leaves, but don't draw the leaves, draw the space around the leaves. What's between the leaves and the frame. So the white space, like Mel said. Okay, so we're gonna. Lynn, you had a really good strategy for tricking yourself.
So I stuck some sticks around my foot, and then my flip-flops I took off and I put them around. So then I was trying to look at this space between my flip-flop and my foot, and I'm like, okay, what does that look like? It kind of looks like a bottle. So I'm kind of like trying to like draw up, and then you have to keep tricking your head like, oh, go back to the bottle. You're thinking, okay, my foot doesn't really look like that. How much space is there between this stick I have at the top and, what does this shape look like? This looks kind of like a rectangle with the angle at the bottom, and it's just in fact where my leg was coming out and the other stick. So I'm thinking about this stuff and trying not to think about my foot.
When you were drawing the leaves, what were you focusing
So
on?
first I used my phone to do a frame, and after I focused really much on those leaves. So I was really focused, and I could even see some lighting that I couldn't see if I was not focused in the negative space, kind of. So I went and I tried to use also the exercise not to put my pen,
Keep your pencil.
keep my pencil on.
Yeah.
So, and I try at the same things to have a balance, kind of.
It is well composed.
I don't know.
No, it's really nice.
Thank you.
You have to keep tricking yourself and telling yourself to not focus on in her case, her foot, but the space around her foot between those twigs and her flip-flops and her foot. And it looks like a foot. She wasn't really trying to draw her foot. I think it might be easier if you're looking straight in front of you. So if you stand up and use the frame of the pergola to define a space in front of you. You can draw the vines again, you can draw a tree. Don't pick the landscape, try to pick an object for the purpose of the exercise. So it might help to, again, focus on the vines. But you need some hard edges to act as a frame. And you're going to focus on everything that's in that frame and around what you're drawing. So if it's the vine or some leaves or a tree, you're going to be focusing on the space between that object and the frame. And we're going to spend, I think, about 7 minutes doing that, and then we'll talk about it again. Just be sure to pick a really defined area. And it might help to be looking straight on at like the rectangle or the square of the wood framing a certain area.
I was trying to do the contour, Hampton.
You're an artist, Stephanie.
Any of you have any particular thoughts on the exercise and how it felt? I'd love it, and I'm sure everybody would appreciate it if you would share any insights you had. That's a good one to start with.
Yeah, it's very good.
So
Well, the thing that the big challenge to me was different planes, because in fact this is all multi-planed, and you have to keep this in your mind as one plane. And it's, so you had to really fight. I had to fight it because you know I kept doing depth perception, and in fact that would go against what I was trying to do.
That line that you drew, what did it feel like, or what do you?
Well, I just had.
What did you?
I had to. Well, as opposed to the other drawings where I was doing detail, this had to be crisp. This had to be, one-dimensional. I couldn't be.
So you were ignoring certain.
Yes, I had to ignore a lot in order to do it, and to bring this into focus.
Okay.
I basically said that it's like tracing the object. The negative space is tracing the object. Yeah.
I think that's a really good insight, because you basically are. You're kind of pretending that there's a sheet of paper in front of you, and or like a sheet of trace paper on top of something, and you're tracing what's in front of you.
Right.
I think that's a really good way to look at it.
I think I need more practice. I just found something very simple, which was a square behind this pole where there's a plant over it, and I did straight lines, because the moment I tried to focus on the outline of the plant, I ended up focusing on the plants. So I just did straight lines. So as a beginner, to me, I know that this is the plant and this is the negative space. That's the only way I could manage it at this point.
What I found that helped me, I was doing a jigsaw puzzle at Christmas, and it was 1,000 pieces, and I was just staring at those shapes, and then, because I looked at the negative space to see what piece could fit there.
Yeah.
So to me, it was like looking at the negative space of a puzzle piece.
I love that way of looking at it. Yeah.
The space of a puzzle piece. Yeah, that's it.
Yes. That's a fantastic way to think about it.
So I used the frame, and then I saw the space that I could not draw the leafy part without getting cut up by the leafy part. So I just decided, okay, this is like a triangle, and this is like another kind of a triangle, and there's that space. And the more I did that, I was able to better position. This is a different one, but these two are the same, and this one, that's the reject. So the more I thought about it, the more I was able to more accurately place what I was seeing within the frame, because I was looking at, I couldn't do it with just one line.
No, and you don't have to.
But I was able to see it through these types of this type of view.
So here's my question. I'm trying to understand this again. I'm looking there and there's this V from a plant. Then behind that plant there's another plant. And behind that plant's another plant. So the negative space to me would be everything behind that triangle that's formed there. So you're going to have a number of layers of negative space.
Yeah, you were having to remind yourself to not focus on the different planes.
If you were truly doing a painting, you'd have to focus.
Well, yes, but we're kind of ignoring that right now. Do this exercise.
So the negative space for me, if I was going to paint those branches, would just be a triangle. That would be my negative space.
Yeah, yeah.
She knows what
And
I'm
it's
talking about.
seeing
Nothing
negative-
else, just a triangle.
And seeing negative space. I mean, you
Got
can see
it.
the negative space in the foreground, in
Right,
the middle
right.
ground, in the background.
A solid blob of trees and leaves, and the space around that blob.
Yeah, and you can trick yourself into seeing the negative space. There's like some major shapes, some major portions of negative space, like in between branches or twigs. But then if you look within that space, there are other objects that make their own spaces that are negative spaces in themselves. Like Marianne was saying, you kind of have to trick yourself into seeing the negative space just as one continuous single space. Neil, did you have any? You have a good example there of looking at a poem. Do you have any thoughts? Which is just as good, because like some of you said before, your mind kind of goes silent. I hope you guys enjoyed the class.
Great.
Thank you for coming.